Okay, sorry about that. I had to basically log out of Twitch and then come back into it to be able to access and go live. We are, however, live right now. Let me just kind of test. Hey, look at that. Okay. So, welcome. We're going to be painting this Skeletor painting tonight. I'm kind of going to try and use an unconventional technique. We are going to... One second. Let me make sure I have my other thing. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Okay, so as I was saying, I'm going to be approaching this from a standpoint that I haven't tried before. The basic method that we're going to be doing here is we're going to lay in. Actually, let me back up real quick. This drawing has been affixed with some workable fixative, and we have the blacks are filled with acrylic paint just to kind of blast it in there real quick. It'll likely, as the painting progresses, it'll likely lighten up and take on more of the other hues that are present in the... Let me make sure this is... Okay. We'll make sure that as the paint starts laying on it, that black will become less black and take on more of the hues of the other paint that's on there. Anyway, we're going to go basically do washes of acrylic over this, kind of in local colors, and then I'll be applying a wash of gouache over it. The workable fixative will allow me to pick it out and kind of treat it as like a wet oil, sort of. Like it won't stay well on the surface unless I fix it afterwards. And we're going to kind of see how far we can get. Hopefully we can get a little bit past that and we can get into more of the fine finishing techniques on top of it. If not, maybe I'll do a stream tomorrow or Saturday or something just to kind of pick it up and finish it. If you want to see an example of what kind of the technique I'm talking about, where this illustration that I did a couple years back is basically the same idea, but the shadows in this were done with oil. The main reasons I don't like doing that anymore, I tried it once on this. It was a fun technique. It was interesting. And I did it on one other painting as well. The issue is that the oil, you only have so long to mess with it, with the oil, before it sets up and permanently oxidizes and becomes, you can't remove it unless you hit it with some mineral spirits and really go in there. When it's like that, you can actually remove it with kneaded eraser. We will not be doing that tonight, mostly because I'm pretty sure kneaded eraser won't lift up gouache without some hard rubbing. I mean, we could try it and see. I don't have high hopes for it, to be honest, though. So we're basically going to be trying to attempt this, but instead of oil on top, we'll be using gouache. So let me switch back. Oh, actually, switch this. The colors I'm using tonight, really basic, since there's not much to the color scheme at all. But we have phthalo blue, green shade phthalo blue, permanent violet dark, Hansa yellow medium, titanium white, carbon black, and ultramarine blue gouache. We'll get to that one later. We're starting with these to go with. And let me just kind of quickly set this up. And we'll probably start with the permanent violet. And I mentioned it before, I think, on a previous stream. The pretty much my setup, it's off camera, but basically to this upper left, I have my wash bucket. Right here is my clean water. It has some flow aid put into it. It basically helps the acrylic flow a little bit better. I believe it does it by breaking the surface tension of the acrylic in the water to allow it to come off the brush easier. Kind of the equivalent of like adding dishwater soap to your jar of water, or sorry, dishwater soap to your jar of water. So we're gonna just kind of start here. Just gonna get the brush wet to get it to be malleable. And I'm going to switch over to Twitch on this thing so I can see if there's anybody that asks questions or anything like that. And we're just going to start laying in these colors like as a pretty light wash overall. And it's kind of okay if it, if it doesn't come out, if like the brush strokes are visible, it kind of, at least for me, kind of adds to the charm a little bit. And if you design it right within the thing, it'll look intentional. And I'm going with a kind of warm purple for now because the ultramarine blue is a cool color, and I think it'll kind of mesh well with this purple as we go over it. And when I was looking up Skeletor a little earlier, I forgot that the toy had like a green skull for a face. I thought that was really interesting, so I'm going to be doing that for this one as well. I can't decide, however, if he should have glowing eyes or not. I think, obviously, the cartoon version did not. The toy version, however, I think did. So let me know if that is a route we should take. Or not. And you can already see that the black is actually, maybe it's not showing up in the camera, but the black is now starting to take on the purple hue of the cloak and all that of his hood. Kind of go through and hit some areas on here. I am the sort of painter that absolutely has to kind of do things in stages. Um, I'm not the sort that can figure out like value and mass and tone all at once. So this thing of like establishing the drawing and then laying in local colors and then laying in a shadow, that makes a lot of sense to me. The other way I've done it in the past also is lay in a drawing like this, apply the colors over it, kind of a little shy of what the final values will be. So sort of like not really the shadow colors, but not really the light colors either. Kind of like a little darker than the mid-tone of each local color. And then kind of go back in with washes of acrylic and colored pencil. Use the colored pencil to establish the lights and like the washes of acrylic to establish the shadows. And let me know if you have any questions or anything. This early area, not a whole lot to it just because it is just kind of laying in acrylic, and as it dries, going back over into certain areas and trying to reestablish some parts of it. We will, if we get past the point of, and hopefully because we'll kind of motor through this part quickly, we can get to the gouache pick out portion of it too. Uh, while we're waiting for that to dry, because it'll just take a few moments, I'll probably do like some drawing or something on stream as well, just so we're not all waiting around, because it can take a few minutes. I can try and speed it up using a hair dryer, but that's not always guaranteed, and that might actually sometimes make it not work well. It'll like push around the paint as it dries on the surface. So this was just a scrap piece of illustration board that I cut up a while ago. So I kind of pulled it out. I just figured like I wanted to try out this technique after talking with some friends about how I use gouache, and I started thinking like, I could probably use it this way too. I haven't tried it like that. I've only tried it with oils. And so I got out this scrap piece of illustration board and just kind of drew the Skeletor on him. Since yes, hi Errol. Did you just hop in? trying to respond. So yeah, I just grabbed a scrap piece of illustration board and then figured I'd draw Skeletor since I just saw the Masters of the Universe trailer for the new Netflix show. So Errol, I was talking about it earlier, and it's Skeletor, Matt. Of course he's terrifying. What I'm gonna do is basically we're kind of trying to reattempt this version or this technique, but instead of oils as the shadow, we're going to use gouache. Uh, in this piece, what I did was local colors established with acrylic washes, kind of like I'm doing right now for Skeletor, and then I applied basically a shadow color over it. If you use Photoshop, it's basically the equivalent of like doing a multiply layer and then using a clipping mask or an eraser to pick out your lights. Same idea. The issue is I don't like working in oils, to be honest. The smell is awful to me. I don't like the drying times. I'm very impatient. So after I was talking to some friends earlier this week, I guess, now I think about it, and I was kind of explaining how I've used gouache in the past, and then I started thinking, like, I could try this technique and instead of oils use gouache. I don't see why it would be any different. The workable fixative that's over the drawing basically prevents the gouache from seeping into the page, and the acrylic will just add to that. It'll just kind of create like a fine plastic film. Oh, so here's a question. Earlier I was trying to figure out. Okay, so I'm basically I'm basing the colors of this one off of the toy, which has the green skull instead of like the show, which has like that bland beige, uh, like bone color for his skull, right? The thing is I'm trying to decide if we include eyes in him or not. I remember the toy having eyes, but I know that the show version does not. It's basically like this visage. And so I was debating earlier whether or not I wanted to incorporate those as we build them up. What say you? And I need to figure out a better camera setup. I'm still playing around with the camera setup. I'm trying to. The issue with this is I can't really lean forward right now because my head gets in the damn way. So I'm still kind of playing with it. Last week I was able to kind of move forward a decent amount without my head getting in the way, but the issue is that maybe do eyeless. Yeah, like I never leaned hard one way or the other in terms of Skeletor. Excuse me. Um, it could really be. I did. You had that sketch actually, Errol. Yeah, we'll go eyeless then in this for this one. But anyway, yeah. So I'm trying to still figure out my camera setup. I'm trying to figure out like how high should the camera be to be able to take in whatever I'm working on here, and then what kind of like when I did the Kaijun sketch, I had a I had decent freedom in terms of moving my head around and all that. But the problem was is because the camera was so off to the side, we had this like weird skewed look to everything, and I really didn't notice that until I was looking at the replay of it. So I'm still playing around with this. The at least the palette webcam, I've pretty much sorted that out. And I don't think you guys were in earlier when I was explaining it, but we're using permanent violet dark, phthalo blue, Hansa yellow medium, titanium white, and carbon black. The carbon black we probably won't use a whole lot of. The other colors we will. And for the shadows, we're using ultramarine gouache blue. Camera and a phone. I do not have two cameras. Actually, no, I take that back. I do. I think I could always bogart one of Ange's, but I only have one capture card. So the phone is basically it's using some software that's provided by Elgato called Epoch Cam, and it basically turns your phone into a webcam, so you can kind of see what's going on and use it as that. And with the Streamlabs, I basically have it set up where the main screen is my camera being fed into the computer using a capture card, and then the webcam is my iPhone, and that's capturing the palette. So I figured I don't need that high of a quality for the palette. It just needs to kind of it just kind of captures me mixing around colors for anyone's curiosity. I have a tendency because I would not categorize myself as a great painter or even a good painter, to be honest. I tend to paint because of how I build up things in terms of layers. I tend to paint very pure colors, uh, and I do a lot of optical mixing as a result. So that's kind of what you're seeing here. Where Oh, Errol, if you want a capture card, I can recommend. The one I'm using is only $40. It's not like stupid expensive like the Elgato one. I can send you a link to that later tonight or something. Oh, and then something else that I do that I guess other acrylic artists don't is I don't use a wet palette. I've tried. I've made like my own using freezer paper or parchment paper with like a wet sponge underneath it or like a damp sponge underneath it to keep all the paints wet while I'm working. I didn't care for it. I just basically use a glass palette, and then when it's dry, I just scrape it up so I can use it again. And honestly, the way I work, it works fine for that purpose. So I haven't felt like a strong need to change. And maybe I should though. Who knows? Maybe revisiting the wet palette, I'd find it interesting. Let's see. I don't really want to add any blue to this because the blue is going to be in the shadows. I'm debating whether to use some red. Though I fear that that would probably take away the vibrancy of the color by muddying it up. And I also fear the same thing with using black to darken up stuff. I'm just going to kind of try and keep layering things here first and see how far we can get. The problem with this is like when you're laying in stuff, it just looks unfinished until you put in the shadows. Just because you're like basically, lack of a better term, you're flatting the colors, same way like a comic colorist puts everything in. Okay, let's get this bit down here, and then we can work on his skull. And this brush I'm using, it's Robert Simmons White Sable. These are pretty much my workhorse brushes. They are awesome, and they are supremely cheap. Probably the cheapest decent brushes I use. I don't really use. I have some fancy brushes from when I thought that'd be a thing. Like I should have fancy brushes. Uh, and also like habits of inking comics. You want like nice Kolinsky sable brushes for that. But I've grown to like these a lot. These cheapo brushes. When they're still good, I mean this one it's starting to get out of the phase of being a workhorse brush as well. It's just because the tip on it here, the tip on it is so blasted. Actually, let me switch over to the yeah, the tip on it is so blasted that it doesn't really go into a point anymore. It just goes into this dull edge, which is fine, but it is starting to get to the point where I can't get into tight areas anymore with it. And I have to like switch brushes more often or just go into like a finer brush overall. So I think this is just me because I do have a heavy hand and I have to watch it. Um, I've tried really hard to get good with brush inking, with like brush pen inking, and I recently got a Kuretake brush pen. It has like actual like fibers of some kind. I don't think they're synthetic. I think it's natural or something like that. And I have some fountain pen ink in it, um, and I've been working with that. And I've been doing okay stuff with it, but I don't know. For some reason, brush pens I don't have the same control as I do with like regular brushes. I don't know if that's just a weird, like I'm psyching myself out quirk or what. Okay, let's switch over to the webcam and let's start adding in some blue and yellow. And I'm thinking we may not have to add the white. I'm going to try not to until we start doing more like the opaque passes. So I just need to get that right, like vibrant green that the toy is. And you know what? Since this is a mix, we can actually so I do, but the thing is, it's like I work in absolute silence when I'm by myself anyway. I got, like, before my surgery, I got burnt out on listening to music. I think because of the hearing loss in my one ear. So I don't really like to listen to music anymore, um, at least not while I'm working. And then, yeah, like I either have like a Netflix thing on or a Hulu thing on or, like a show like that. But if I don't have something like that on, then I just work in complete silence. I kind of like it, which is crazy because I know a lot of people do like to work in uh, with like music of some kind, and yeah, I just don't anymore. And I was never really super big on that anyway. Oh, gotta watch my head. And this we can also, because it's a mix, I can also shift it more cool for into the shadows. Basically, preload our shadow work. And I have to kind of watch it because the yellow is acting as the opacifier. Actually, yeah, Errol, do you work in absolute silence when you're not streaming either, or do you have like a show on or something when you work? Oh no. Or is that you saying you need something to listen to, or you're saying hell no, you don't listen to anything? Ah, see, I was always okay with it. I would sometimes sit in my room in silence just because I needed like a break. I don't know, like a weird sensory thing on my part. What's funny is when there is like a show or something on, I have no problem tuning that out, or if it's like a podcast or something. Um, but music, for some reason, I can't tune it out. It just, I'm too focused on it while I'm working, which is crazy because I think that's the inverse for a lot of people. Actually, most people say they can't work with something like a show on unless it's something that they saw a million times before. And I'm like, no, I can throw on like a documentary I've never seen before. Yeah, exactly. Something else to add to my FBI psych profile. Oh, speaking of, so I finished that Sasquatch documentary. That shit, at the same time crazy and then also like kind of mundane in terms of the reveal. But it was great. It was a great documentary. Short too. It's only 3 hours total. So definitely do yourself a service and give that a watch. And we still haven't gotten through the latest Loki episode. We had a late start to dinner and all that tonight, so we didn't get all the way through it because once Marcy went to bed, I had to hop on here for stream. Well, okay, like compared to Tiger King, which is a fucking like 6 hour slog or 7 hour slog. And the other thing is it's split up into episodes, so it's 3 episodes. Each episode is an hour long. So it's not like a movie where you're sat there for 3 hours. You know, there are breaks in it um, that are dictated by the episodes themselves. So you can watch one, get up and do something, whatever, and like watch another one another day. Like I basically spaced it out over 3 or 4 days myself. I think I'm gonna add like just pure yellow to some of his areas. Like the light areas, because I think that'll help introduce some interesting color variety to him before we put the shadows on. You know what? Like Tiger King, man, Tiger King starts out really strong, and then I want to say it actually held its own for a lot of it, but towards the end, like the denouement kind of bit, that's when you're like all the cards are kind of laid on the table. That was it. Like watered down yellow. Just because I don't want to go opaque yet, so it'll be watered down yellow, but it'll be a pure right out of the tube yellow instead of a mix. I might do that real quick before I punch in some bluer tones into this. Just because once I punch in the blue, it's going to be domineering it. Oh yeah, that's definitely, I think that's a good choice. And like once so the doing the gouache shadow pick out, that's not the end all be all for it. It's actually kind of like the end of the first stage. Uh, After that, I'll probably go in with like some colored pencils and then some more opaque acrylic on top of that as well. And that's when I can kind of take this more bright white. Like unironically, or you like I love him because he's one of those great villains that absolutely gives no fucks. And I kind of love how campy it is as a result. It's the same thing. Like I don't like the prequels at all, really, but man, I got to give it up at least. Like fucking Palpatine is the only one enjoying himself in those movies because he's having the time of his goddamn life. And I feel the same way with Skeletor. Like He-Man's super serious, but Skeletor just fucking doesn't care. He's having the time of his life, just trying to get Castle Grayskull. Yeah, he can monologue for days. So I was actually talking with another friend. Like Skeletor, like I also who did the design for He-Man? Was that Alex Toth or was that someone else? Because the design for Skeletor and then the designs, which I believe the same designer did, not the same designer for He-Man, but the same designer did Thunderhawks, or sorry, Thundercats and Silverhawks, and I think that's why I like Mumra and Monstar as well because both of them have very similar things where they've got a really neat like weakened form and then a really neat like strong form as well, like powered up form. And Skeletor doesn't have that, but he kind of has that same energy. Okay, yeah, adding this yellow was a really good choice. And then I can kind of optically mix it too into the green. Yes, absolutely. I would love to see Mumra achieved through practical effects as well. If like a really enterprising cosplayer did it, that would make my day. Like you don't even need a movie. I just need one really talented cosplayer achieve it. But yeah, like I think like in ranking, I love. Oh, that'd be exciting to bring back. I would love to see Sci-Fi Show come back. Is it coming back through Sci-Fi? Because I feel like they wouldn't really care about it. But if it came back through someone else, I could see that having legs. Honestly, I mean, Netflix, come the fuck on. You got nailed it, which is a gift to humanity. Give us Face Off as well. So, real quick, as a break from uh, me just kind of chatting, um, I'm going to kind of go back in and do some bluer passes of the green mixture, kind of just to preload my shadows a little, and then uh, we'll apply the blue gouache wash over it, and we'll see where that gets us. I'm liking where this is going so far, though. I think this is coming out okay. I'm not stepping into frame too much, am I? Hopefully, I'm not. Wow. Yeah, that's a. I mean, it was a really fun show. So to see that it has the petition to bring back Face Off has like already 30,000 votes. Oh, hey, Grace. I'm assuming like most people are in a Scott's smart class right now. Okay. Oh, so for any curious, this is kind of related. This is tied to last week's stream. I was messing around in Blender and I was trying to figure out why my mannequin wasn't keeping its pose when I went to render. I figured out the issue. It was basically I had to commit it to a keyframe on the timeline when I went to pose. That was why it wasn't sticking. And apparently, I was like on frame 3 or something like that of the thing as well. So, what it was doing was the base armature was established on frame 0. And because I was on frame 3, me moving around and stuff, because I hadn't committed it to a keyframe yet, it was just defaulting back to the T pose of that mannequin. So figured it out, and then I played a little bit more with my thumbnail for it. I remember I posted, I think, where I was going with it on a Twitter. Okay, I think that is it for the acrylic. I'm going to hit it with a hair dryer real quick just to make sure it is actually dry. I'm going to probably mute myself just so this isn't like super loud. Yeah, it is recording it. So it's being run through Streamlabs OBS, and there's an ability to record while you're streaming. So it's actually, and I have it set up through a setting within Streamlabs OBS where when I tell it to go live, it automatically starts with the recording as well. Because last stream, I figured this out on the last stream. I forgot to set it, so it didn't record that stream at all. So that stream's just kind of lost to time. And I hadn't figured out the rest of my Twitch settings yet either. But yeah, Streamlabs OBS has an ability to, in addition to streaming, recording as well, and then I can upload that to YouTube or something later, wherever I want to. And I can do a bunch of things. Like I have a remote control set up through my phone or my iPad as well. So I'm able to. That's how I'm able to do like the switching between the cameras and all that. Let's kind of give that a feel. All right. Yeah, yeah. Actually, I should put this as a. I've been meaning to cut down the Kaijun one as well, like just the back half of it into like a nice time lapse. Um, I just haven't given myself time to sit down with DaVinci Resolve and cut that down. I'm still we're still making some stuff for the Kickstarter video for the Cthulhu Idols, which goes live on July 9th. Uh, so a lot of my time outside of these streams has been taken up with that right now. But yeah, that is something I do want to. I should do that as well. I think that would actually be really nice. Uh, I think that would definitely get some eyeballs on it. So we're at the stage where this can go really wrong because we're about to try something different. Um, we're going to try some gouache. Let me switch over. Yeah, so you see, this is the advantage of the glass. I just am able to quickly scrape it up and clean it up. Okay, let's move those over there. Let's move this back so you guys can see it. Oh. All right. So this technique before we do it, this technique really only works well with fresh gouache. Dried gouache does not activate well. I've tried it. The problem is it takes a lot of water to activate the dried gouache, and that kind of messes with the coverage that goes on as a result. So I've kind of since realized it needs to be fresh gouache, which does lead to I should come up with a better solution using condiment cups and all that, because then I can kind of create a little paint pot. But what we're doing is we're kind of getting it wet down, but we're not getting it like super, super wet. It's kind of like a little bit past milk consistency. Uh, and then we're just going to apply this over the whole thing. I'm even going to go over the background too. It's fine because I'm kind of planning to, like, if need be, cut in on those areas. And I'm trying not to water it down too much because I actually do want it to cover up a lot. And if it's too transparent, then the pick out effect doesn't really work as well as it should. You can kind of see there's a little bit of beading on the surface, like basically how there's that grain that's popping up. That is from the workable fixative that was put down, because basically the workable fixative creates a plastic film over the page. And so you usually have to hit it really hard with water to basically break that so it'll adhere. I'm kind of applying it drier than I normally do. I tend to go a little bit wetter sometimes, since for stream purposes, because this is upright right now, I didn't want it to run too much. Actually, I kind of like, maybe I've figured out the right consistency that it should be. All right, so what we'll get to figure out in a moment is, did Andrew put enough layers of workable fixative on here to lift it up, or did we just mess up the whole painting? And we will be finding that out shortly. And I think, like, we'll rip off the band-aid and start with the face first to see. Actually, we can even start with the background just to make sure it is lifting up. So I'm just kind of going back in to see if I can get that to be a little bit darker before I let it dry. And we could take our drawing break while it's drying. This is good. We're like 10 minutes till 11. The pick out won't take that long to do. It's a fairly fast technique. At least it is when I'm using it as an underpainting. I'm curious to see how it is over a something like this. Excuse me. If you guys have any questions about this technique, please feel free to ask it. I'll try and explain what I'm trying to do here and how I've kind of tackled this before in the past. I it's funny, like when I do illustrations, I don't tend to do the same exact thing on each one. I actually think like every illustration I've done, it's always had a slightly different order of operations, even though it's like roughly the same techniques and the same overall methodology. But I've done it like multiple ways. I've done the gouache section of it as an underpainting first, did the pick out, and then I would affix it, and then I would like airbrush colors on top of that. I've also uh, like started just laying in washes of acrylic and then built it up into opaques from that as well. I've done where I'm working on a gray ground with the pencil and basically like a tonal drawing put in, and I airbrush color over that and then take washes of color over that as well. Really, the one method I haven't done is I haven't done any kind of like window painting, like how Greg Manchess works, or like how a lot of people work with oil paints, I feel like. And the main takeaway I would say is a lot of my stuff tends to have a lot of texture as a result of how I work. And that's something I'm totally okay with. I'm just getting out the water of this brush. Okay, so while that's drying, I'm going to mute myself real quick so I can get up and grab some things. Okay, so we'll check back on that on the hour. Um, it should be fully dry. I actually think it's mostly dry by now, so we may not have to do a whole lot of noodling around. This was a preliminary for a really old painting when I was trying to figure out some effects. I like this comp. I'm not a huge fan of the final. I think it's like kind of too dark, and there were some effects in it that I should have done differently. I should have figured out these tree shapes a little bit better instead of just having them be like white graphic shapes. This is the total version of ink piece that I did ages ago called The Gardener and Her Crop. The final is like 18 by 24. It was interesting. I kind of learned a lot on it. There's some things within this that I liked a lot, and I wish I had that on the final. If I were more foolhardy, I would try and reattempt it again, but I've kind of learned at this point that when I'm reworking stuff, it doesn't tend to go well for me. Like if I ever try and redo an old idea, I feel like there's something that's always lost. So while that's drying, let's kind of do just a bullshit sketch. And it's kind of light, so you probably won't be able to see it. But I don't know. We could do like a vampire bat kind of creature while we wait. Oh yeah, so Errol, how far? Your Kaijun this year have been really great. Actually, I've been meaning to talk to you about that privately for some ideas I've had, or at least I want to see like some more of your sketches, or just have them on hand so I can try out some things. I think the ones this year would translate really nicely to the experiments I was trying to do last year with yours, but I may not be able to get around to it until after this Kickstarter. But I had an idea, and it kind of came about because I was looking at some other Kickstarters that people were doing. Just checking it. It feels the lead feels a little weak, so I wondered if it like broke inside the shaft or not. That's not too bad. You're basically a week behind. Have you been pretty much keeping at that pace, or has it been slowly getting to that? Like, has it, were you originally like one behind or two behind and it's slowly grown to six, or have you been like kind of consistently six behind? Because I don't think that's too bad to do. I don't think that's that terrible that you're only six behind. And granted, you're already doing some really hard work by having it be like do every single one. I wouldn't be bothered doing that nowadays. Hmm, I gotcha. Yeah, your version of Goldar. Are you gonna kind of just basically do? Are you doing like your own take on Goldar? Or are you gonna just basically do Goldar, like from the '90s? Okay, I'm gonna mute real quick while I switch back. Okay, this is the moment of truth. We actually get to see if this technique works. If I put down enough fixative and acrylic to cause it to lift off, or is it gonna give me guff? So before we start, I use to do this technique. You only need to use pure water. It's nothing else. Basically, the water acts as a solvent to the gouache because gouache is water soluble, and it causes the paint to reactivate and be lifted up by friction. Um, the what I use to lift it up, you can use basically if the surface is damp, you can use a towel. You can use Q-tips, makeup sponges, brushes, what have you. The main thing is the more water that's on the surface, the less friction that will be generated, and so the less paint will be lifted up. Uh, the opposite end of that is the less water that's on the surface, the more friction that'll be generated, and the more paint that will be lifted up. You kind of have to get a feel for exactly how much that works. I'm still kind of getting a feel for it, and I've done this a couple of times. Um, I used to do this using sable brushes. I now use these synthetic mongoose brushes by Escoda. It's basically a halfway between like a sable or bristle. It's not like a hog, like the equivalent of like a hog bristle brush, which is very rough and which actually lift it up really quick. But it's not like a sable where I would have to basically lick the surface constantly to get it up. This is because it's a mongoose. It's basically medium stiffness, medium friction overall. Uh, this will take this up a lot faster than a sable brush, which is kind of very pliant and will take a little bit of doing to get it to get the paint out of the canvas. So we will see how this works. I'm just using this paint that I have right here, I have a napkin to basically wet or to lick off any paint or water that's on the brush. That basically controls how much water is going onto the canvas. So we'll see how this goes. And actually, real quick before I start, let me get my maul stick as well, because I have a feeling I might need that. And sorry, Errol, I did see your comment earlier. Yeah, I freaking Goldar from the 90s with some of you in it. I think that'd be really great. Okay, yeah. So you can kind of see the fixative is allowing us to really lift it up. And the neat thing about it is because it doesn't totally lift it up, it also helps unify everything too as a result. So I'm just going to kind of quickly cut in the background before I start on the face, just to reestablish that. Oh, that was too much water. And the crimes can be hidden later. This stage, it always looks a little rough until you really start cleaning it up with like colored pencils and that kind of thing. And if we have enough time, I can get to that. Otherwise, I'll save that for a future stream that I'll maybe do over the weekend on like Saturday or something. Fridays I tend to reserve nowadays as a decompress kind of thing. I just, after surgery, I just hit a point where I need some amount of time to myself. And so if that does involve art for myself, then that involves art, but I don't try and make it like an absolute. Especially because I'm doing this like after hours, and I have the art day job as well. Yeah, exactly. It took having a tumor for me to really think about that, to be honest. I design. Here, I guess I should actually say the question. Grace, so my day job is I design apparel for theme parks and stores and all that. Our clients are like Universal, Disney, Hard Rock Cafe. Trying to think who else. Coca-Cola. Lately, I guess if you're in the U.S., it's Top Golf too. That's one of our new ones. And yeah, so I basically do graphic design for that as well as like illustration. We create the graphics that go onto those like teas and all that. And it's interesting work. I've just been doing it for like 10 years now, so I think I'm finally hitting like a wall. Actually, let me check real quick and see if some Q-tips would be. Yeah, and the thing is like I've also been doing freelance for those 10 years as well, off and on. So I've had like 10 years of doing art 8 hours a day and then coming home and doing freelance work or personal work for like another 4 or 5 hours each day as a result. And that was semi sustainable for a while, but uh, now that I'm married and I have a kid, it's hard to get into that mind space a lot of times. And then I had like a health uh, thing happen 2 years ago, and I had surgery for it a year ago, and yeah, the recovery from that like just took a lot of wind out of my sails for a bit. Like I'm kind of just now getting back to how I was before the surgery. So I'm thinking I probably could have gone back in. It's lifting up, but it's not lifting up as much as I would have liked. I probably should have done another layer of workable fixative on it. But at least, like, for the back, this is fine because I can uh, come back in with like white gesso and basically do a line decker thing. Yeah, we're no longer we're in our mid 30s, and there's some nights when I feel it. Which is crazy because at least how I feel about it, like before I had the surgery, I felt like I could do it. I could reasonably hold up that energy still for the most part, but post surgery, like I don't know what it is. Either maybe it was just like a brush with death or something like that, but it's been hard to generate that same amount of energy, uh, and at least kind of get back to how I was before. It's hard. It's it's very hard to do a full time thing and then a freelance on the side, especially if the two are not copacetic with each other. Like I have some friends that have done the same thing. However, like like an example being like their full time job was maybe like video games or something like that, and they were doing freelance illustration on the side. And even though the industries are different, those two feed into each other a lot easier than say someone working a day job that can't really contribute portfolio wise to your freelance work, either because it's a incredibly separate art job, or it's just not an art job at all and you're just working like a regular day job. And it's hard to find that time then. It is. It's really hard, and it's just yeah, exactly. Like Errol knows exactly what I'm talking about. And it's hard. And what's hard about it is like you have some people that are young and somehow make that work early on, and man, you're like, I would like to be there, but it's difficult to get that moment. Once the momentum's rolling, I think you get into that. Like I had some momentum going, and think I could have switched over into doing freelance by now. The issue is that my momentum was going, but then I had the surgery happen, and it basically took me out for like a year and a half. And just during that time, like I didn't really draw. I didn't like have a whole lot of energy to do anything, to be honest, outside of just living my life. And so I kind of feel like, at least for me, my momentum's kind of back to zero, and I need to start building it back up again. Which is partly like what these streams are for me, is to kind of force myself to be doing things. And as I do more of these, I'll kind of maybe focus it towards like, developing portfolio work or anything like that. And then at least also within, yeah, that too. Like, so Errol and I have 2 year olds, or sorry, he has a 2 year old. I have a 2 year old. I have a kid that is about to be two in like a month. Um, when they're really young, it's really hard to do things just because kids require a lot of your attention. So if you don't have something established, it's fucking malarkey to try and like expect something is gonna get started then. And, they're when they're useless lumps early on, it's kind of easy. Like I was able to work with Marcy on my chest and all that. Um, and then she would kind of go to bed around like 8 or so. But then, like around a few months, they already like you're out of that phase and they're starting to like want to play and all that. And then you really need to like give them your full attention. Even still, like I give her, yeah, malarkey, man. Yeah, they aim towards self-destruction, or I don't know. Does your kid? Sorry, I didn't want to like say her name because I don't know how like private you want to be with her name and all that kind of thing, Errol. But does your kid also try and like draw and stuff? Specifically, like try and use your supplies while you're using them. I've run into that. My daughter has, anytime I have the iPad out and I'm using Procreate, she wants to draw. So I have to give her. She's the boss of us, so she gets control of that for like 30 minutes or so, and then she's kind of usually bored at that point. But I have loads of Procreate drawings that are all hers. So if you ever want to do, So if you're ever like want to be a water media person, see, oh, sorry. So let me finish this conversation before I talk about this. Uh, yeah. So Errol just said that his daughter has crayons and plenty of paper that they give her. We've given her crayons. She doesn't really care about them. She knows that like I do art things, I think, and she's like when I'm working, she wants to work, and so she's worked with charcoal already. She's worked with the iPad whenever I try and work with it. But the one thing she does have, and I think it's because she hasn't seen me sculpt yet, is oh, and she's also sat at my computer desk and she's wanted to be on the Cintiq because she also understands that that's a drawing thing as well. Um, but anyway, so the one thing that she hasn't seen me do yet is sculpt, and I think because of that, that's why she's focused on her Play-Doh. My kid fucking loves Play-Doh, and that is her creative toy for children that she gloms onto when she's not play cooking. Because she also likes to really do that. So anyway, so I was mentioning like if you're a water media artist, someone that works in watercolor or gouache or acrylic, this actually might be, I guess, the most applicable person would be acrylic because gouache and watercolor have very particular ways of working with them if you're only working with them or primarily working with them. And this wouldn't be super useful for that. The gouache might, but I honestly think the way I'm about to explain it would probably work a little bit better. If you are an acrylic artist and say you want to have your stuff, you want to be able to manipulate a little bit more like oils, this would kind of, this gouache pick out that I'm doing right now would kind of get you there. It'll, it's not a one for one, but it does kind of get you to at least replicate like how oil with mineral spirits acts. This is very similar to how I used to do like burnt umber pickouts uh, when I was learning how to paint. And then what you do is after you do your pick out, if you want to go back in and do like acrylic on top of it. Oh yes, sorry, sorry, Mark. So let me explain it real quick. So what we did first is we had a drawing on a white illustration board. The drawing had some black filled in there, but it was basically tonal drawing, and then I applied thin washes of acrylic as local colors over the drawing to create like a kind of like flats for a comic. And then the blue is gouache, and it was applied over. The drawing was fixed, workable fixative, and then the acrylic basically also adds a plastic film over the surface as well, so the gouache doesn't have a whole lot to adhere with, so it becomes easier to lift up off of the page. I probably should have done another round of workable fixative on the drawing just to make it come up a little bit easier, but we can work around that because I think it's going to come up fairly easy on Skeletor because of the acrylic washes. I just need to finish doing this background. So the blue is basically acting as like a multiply layer in Photoshop. We're using it as like the shadow thing, as the shadow layer for this painting. And then once I have it all picked out, then I'll kind of go and spray more workable fixative on it. You could also spray matte medium that's watered down. That kind of acts as workable fixative as well if you prefer that. I've done both ways. The fixative is a little faster, but then you have to deal with fixative, and who knows if that's something that you would prefer to work with or not. That's up to each person. But yeah, once the pickout's done, you fix it again so the gouache can't be removed, and then you can kind of go back over with acrylic and colored pencil to work it up a little bit more. And we're gonna try and let's see, it's 11:30. We'll see. I might only be able to get through the pickout tonight, and then I'll have to finish it out like another night this weekend. Let me switch over to this guy. And you can kind of see like this area right here. Some water dripped right on there, and just picking up with the napkin, that's what it does. It lifts up really easy when there's basically via capillary action or the friction of like a brush rubbing against it. Oh, and Mark, I think you might be the only one that's in the chat right now that was at the last live stream. I figured out my issue. I don't know if you remember, but I was having issues with the armature not keeping the pose. It would default to the T pose whenever I went to render. The issue I figured out with that was I was on frame 3 within the file. So frame 0 had a keyframe of a T-pose established. And the reason was because I hadn't established a new keyframe with the pose, it was defaulting to that original pose. So my fix for it was I just had to add a new keyframe with the pose that I wanted. And then it would stick so I could be able to go and actually output a render. Yeah, and it was if I wasn't streaming at that night, that would have been something I would have figured out after the first go around because all I literally did was just Google that issue. Like armature is not, my armature keeps defaulting back to the original pose. What's going on? And that was the very first thing that popped up, and I was like, oh, of course, that makes plenty of sense. So I'm going to start in on the face now. And this is when we'll start to really see it shine. Yeah, similar to I don't know if like LD or the Canadians or anybody has ever like described comics, the process of coloring comics to you, uh, or even like for digital art that's non-pixel art. But you can kind of do local colors and then apply a multiply layer over it in Photoshop that acts as your shadow layer, and then you just kind of use a clipping mask or you an eraser and just basically erase what you don't want it to be. That's the same thing that I'm doing here. And the way I lift it out is the less water that's on the brush and the more vigorous scrubbing that I do, it'll actually lift up the paint a little bit more. The only downside to this method, and it's kind of a result of the fact that I've got the Twitch chat up on my iPad, and then I'm also using that to control when I switch around the cameras, which at this stage I don't really have to worry about that. Um, but it's very easy to get lost in this unless you have reference, just because the gouache can obfuscate a lot of stuff. Oh, uh-oh. See, I think I just rubbed out some acrylic on that. Oh yeah, and I figured out how to switch between cameras a few days ago too. So here we can actually show that in a moment. Let me switch over to this sable. Yeah, okay. So I may have to lift up most of it with the mongoose and then kind of touch up with the sable to really pick it out. Oh, thanks, Matt. Have a good night, dude. So, Marcel, so I'll show you real quick. So I have a remote control on my iPad that lets me switch between my different options. That one I haven't used yet. But so basically, we're kind of doing something similar to this illustration that I did a while ago, where it was the same idea, but it was oil for the shadow, and then it was removed using kneaded eraser. The problem with that is I just don't like working in oils. I don't like the oil drying time either, and you have to kind of hit it at a very particular point. Otherwise, it'll lock up on you, and then you don't, you can't remove it. So I was talking with some people earlier this week, and I was talking with them about how I've used gouache in the past, and then it dawned on me, like, I could probably do that for this technique. I just need to try it out. And I got out like a scrap piece of paper or a scrap piece of illustration board, and then I was like, you know what? I like that Masters of the Universe trailer that just came out. I should do a Skeletor painting for the hell of it. And I'm switching over to a sable brush. I think just for the face, I kind of need to be a little more sensitive to the removal of the paint. I can't just blast through it like how I was with the border. Yeah, with oil, that's what happens. What happens is as the mineral spirits leave the oil, even if it's like thinly applied, the oil oxidizes and you can't lift it up. So with the oil, actually, I should back up. With the oil pickout method, you can actually remove it while it's semi-wet, um, like basically where it's mostly dried, but it's kind of still tacky. You can actually remove it using a kneaded eraser, and that's what I did for that mermaid piece. The issue is uh, you kind of have to do it within about 6 to 8 hours of once you put down the oil, and the oil takes a while for it to dry. Anyway, it takes about 4 or 5 hours to get to a point where you can actually remove it. So excuse me, it makes sense to basically apply that the night before and then go to bed and then wake up tomorrow morning, the next morning, and tackle it. The issue I had with that mermaid piece, the finish that you saw is the second iteration of it. What happened was the first one I wasn't able to tackle it because when I woke up the next morning, that was Easter Sunday, and I had family obligations that I had to go to. Um, since they all observe Easter. Uh, and so by the time I got back to it later that evening, I started working on it. It had already set up all the way, and I wasn't able to remove it without basically using mineral spirits. And even then, it was difficult to remove, so I ended up just having to junk it and just try all over again. With gouache, gouache is water soluble, so as long as nothing is applied to the gouache, you can come back into this like 10 years later, and with some water, you can basically remove all of this blue and completely take it off. What I'll be doing is to make it permanent so I can come back in with the acrylic, I will actually apply some workable fixative to it, which applies a plastic film over the whole thing and makes it so the gouache can't get disturbed by water without some vigorous scrubbing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wonder. Sorry. Yeah, Errol, I gotta. Actually, I haven't talked with them in a long while. I need to hop in on one of the Wednesday night chats, but that's also like usually I'm off doing something else, and I just can't hop into the chat, but I really should because I need to say hi to them. Problem is like I think I don't, Mark, I don't know if it's changed, but do they even hop on? And then secondly, if they hop on, is it super late? Because I know Nas like hops on at like fucking 3 a.m. or something like that, And I'm like dead asleep when he usually does. Yeah. What about GSEP and Mike? Do they ever hop on? I saw earlier like GSEP wanted to hang out with some people, but it was like in the middle of the day. Hmm. Yeah, I think Mike is busy nowadays with work and everything. Oh my God, they're all scattered to the winds. I bet in Toronto. I know LD has been busy as well, so his appearances have been sporadic. I think, haven't they? Yeah, yeah, he's been busy for a few weeks. I remember because I've seen like whenever Mel asks about doing the chat, like he's like, yeah, I'm still chipping away at things. Oh, so to answer your question, Mark, humidity, I'm not sure. So like I live in Florida, which is like super humid. Um, and near as I can tell, it doesn't affect it the way you would think. If you have like a sketchbook, I guess it I think the humidity, depending on how it's stored, like that way, yeah, it can cause some issues. It can maybe make the pages a little bit tacky. Uh, but yeah, I haven't really noticed anything. It doesn't seem like general humidity causes issues because the main thing that causes the paint to be lifted up is either inundating the surface with water and basically washing it off, or doing like what I'm doing, which is basically scrubbing at it. So this is a thing. If you'll kind of see it as an example. So I've been scrubbing for the most part to pick away at a lot of it. I'm just going to kind of let that dry. And what it'll do is it'll lift it up, but it won't lift it up as much as me vigorously scrubbing at it. And oh yeah, Mark, you've been really, I know you've been exhausted too. And I think you're still dealing with like arm pain and stuff too. Oh, see you, Grace. Thank you for stopping by. 5 chickens and 5 kittens. What kind of animal farm are you running over there, dude? One of my brothers has been trying to convince me to get goats. But I think now that he has a mule, I think he's kind of hopped off on bothering me about that. Oh no. The animals just show up. That's the worst. Because you don't want to be that guy that's like, well, just turn them away. Trust me, I've been there. Yeah, exactly. I'm kind of the same way. Uh, we brought in a third cat shortly before uh, we had our daughter, and I mean the cat is very sweet, but she's also, I don't know, she's got like a feral streak in her. Like I don't know if she should totally be an indoor cat, but I really don't want her to be, especially in our area. I really don't want her to be like an indoor outdoor cat, and it's also not good for the wildlife. Uh, like we have three cardinal families that live in our backyard, and I'm pretty sure all of them would be dead if she was allowed to leave the house. So, but as a result, because she's not allowed to leave the house, she causes mischief a ton, and it gets on my nerves. But the alternative, just leaving her house, like she was real young when I found her near my office. So I felt bad about the idea of just leaving her. Yeah. What's crazy is like she was still young enough to be like bottle fed when we found her, at least for like another 2 weeks or so before she could go on to solids. But yeah, it was still old enough that she still had a wild streak in her. And she's still even like that. Like I find her up on the counters all the time and everything. You know what? So it's something we've postulated about being, because she's like a, what are they called? Um, Not calico. She's a tabby of sorts, and I don't know. Maybe that coloration just has a wild streak in them, because it's not like it's a special breed or anything. But I think she came. There's a cat colony that basically is right around the corner from our office, and I think she came from there. Because I see a lot of cats that look like her that live in that cat colony. And when I say cat colony, it's a shit ton of cats that live around like an abandoned warehouse. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what I mean. I just wanted to make sure like no one got the wrong idea and be like, oh, it's like someone has established a cat colony of sort or something. No, these are just feral fucking cats that are living not far from my office. And we had an opportunity to give away the cat when she was young, but I did not want to give her away at the time because she was still pretty young. Um, and I regret that. I should have just had her go to a different house, because having three cats in the house is a lot for us, and we just don't give them the attention like they should as a result. And the other two cats are also much older. Like one of them is 16 years old. So this is kind of how this goes. Yeah, I think No Eyes was the right call also. The camera is definitely doing a lot more to elevate it, I think, than how I'm seeing it in person. Because I'm kind of glancing over, I'm seeing how it looks in the camera, and it's shaping up nicely. When I'm seeing it in person, I'm like, oh, this is still rough. Uh, that's okay though, because again, like this isn't the finish. This is still kind of early on in the process. It's just another layer to it all. So I would like to point out, so like you see this area right here, this is the one drawback of this process is, and I'm not sure if it shows up within the camera or if it is just kind of blown out, but there's an area right here where I basically scrubbed through the paint to the board because the acrylic is applied so thinly. I think it'll be fine in the long run because I'll just kind of hit this with colored pencils and more opaque acrylic to kind of act as adding more depth to this. Oh man. Well, good on you for rescuing the kittens. It's sad that she was a dog attack victim. Hopefully she's better. Or hopefully they're better. I don't know the sex of the kittens. Um, Freaking hilarious that you're just feeding stray chickens that live in the mountains. And are you in Kentucky, is that right? Okay, yeah. So if you're in the mountains, that means you're in like the Appalachian or like the tail end of the Appalachian Mountains, like the Smoky Mountains kind of thing. Isn't that right? Or is there a separate part of it? Okay. I like the Smoky Mountains. It's been a while since I visited. I wouldn't mind checking it again. So, one thing about this that I'll mention is this is a very hard technique to do if you're going at it with a very tiny brush. Hazard, Kentucky. I'll have to look that up later. I'm not sure where that is totally. Um, but yeah, this is a hard technique to do with a very tiny brush because you need the water, and a tiny brush simply does not have the capacity to carry a whole lot of water, so it dries out quickly, and then as a result, you could be lifting up more than you intend, or uh, it could just not lift up at all because it's dry. So you can see, like, even I'm going in mostly with this brush to hit up these areas. So I'm pretty sure this is just because I'm a Floridian, but any area with mountains just fascinates the hell out of me. Like I get legit excited for mountains. Um, I remember when my family and I were in Germany, and oh yeah, super flat and then surrounded by like pine trees. Not even palm trees, really. I mean, we have those a lot around here too, but pine trees and oak are huge, huge plants are down here that we just get loads of them. I just they're native or uh, actually, yeah, I think they are both native to our area. So yeah, anytime I see mountains, I go nuts for it. And like there was one time I was in Germany with my family, like my mom and dad and brothers, and yeah, driving. We were going to a castle up there that was like the basis for like Cinderella's castle. It's Neuschwanstein, if I remember that's how it's pronounced. But to get there, it's like this crazy drive through the mountains. These like tall, tall mountains, and it was so fun to like go up and down and all around and everything. But even something like when I go to a LuxCon in Reading, Pennsylvania, even that drive is a freaking delight for me. And that's just going directly from Philadelphia up to Reading, Pennsylvania. See, that's weird to me because I was like, yeah, I don't miss these things at all. When I was young, one of them took out like one of my fingernails, so I have no love for these fucking things. And they're a pain in the ass to landscape and everything. Hell, right now I'm actually thinking of our front yard. I think we have like an irrigation leak or something, so I need to get that seen to. But I've been thinking about just doing away with the lawn that we have, like not tearing up the grass, but basically planting a competitive uh, plant variety to overtake it over the years and have it be something that's more drought resistant or something. See, okay, so that is the one thing is visiting coastal Florida is a different experience than visiting like inland Florida. Um, yeah, smelling like the sea, that is that is a certain smell that is nice. When I lived, I used to live actually in a beach town, like a year outside of college, and that was something to like wake up, basically wake up to the sound of the sea, go to sleep to it, wake up and have just have that smell in the air, that like constant sea salty smell. The one thing I don't recommend is living up there, living in one of those places during like hurricane season, because buddy, I thought that inland had it bad. Fucking, it's insane if you're on the if you're on the coast. It's like any storm uh, that you would experience is amplified by like five. So even something that is just like a normal storm sounds like a hurricane. And then hurricanes sound like a tornado is about to bear down on your house. I remember, God, I can't. We didn't even have like we never even got hit with a full on hurricane when I was living there. It was just tropical storms, which are like the baby hurricanes. They aren't even full fledged hurricanes. But that I remember stepping out of it one day and seeing like my car, the side of my car, completely sandblasted because all the sand from the beach came up over the dunes and then just hit my car. And that was just from a tropical storm. So God knows what the hell a hurricane would have done. Could have been a lot worse. That was during a time though, like we had a stretch of now because like climate change. We're getting a lot higher category hurricanes and they're happening more frequently. But that was like during a period of time when we had a weird break that didn't make any sense. Uh, and we had a few years where it was just tropical storms or nothing. Uh, like the worst we would get would be like a tropical storm. It's like this is odd. Like we're like 5 years running and no hurricanes. Even the meteorologists are like, this is unusual. We don't know why it's quite like this. It might be because of climate change that it's all discombobulated. And then once we did get a hurricane, it was like an immediate category 4. I think that was Irma, to be honest. I think that was the first one since I was at the beach. Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, so I live in Orlando, which is basically, if you were to look at it on the map, it's dead center for Florida, both in terms of vertical and in terms of horizontal. Which, okay, so it sounds like I'm safer, but Florida's also a fucking sandbar, and it's not really that wide. And because the hurricanes come from west to east, or like sometimes they come from west to east, or at least our storms do regularly, or they come from the Atlantic Ocean and just wash across us, uh, we get pretty much any kind of amount of weather from it, regardless. Yeah, again, like literally the state is just a sandbar. Like we don't have granite. We don't really have a bedrock to speak of. The fact that anything is built here that's not like a one-story house is astounding to me. Yeah, yeah, it is. It is thin, right where we are. So you're like inland, but because it's Florida, it's the same thing. Like, okay, uh, within Florida, you can get flood protection because when you're trying to get like a homeowner's policy, every area in Florida is basically at risk for floods because Newsflash, we're on a sandbar. And we're not that high off the ground. So every area, no matter what they say, is susceptible to flooding. Hell, I'm on a fucking hill and we've been susceptible to flooding. And I'm sorry for anyone that's going to watch this afterwards and be like, why is he rambling about hurricanes and Florida and everything? The reason, more or less, is because there's not a whole lot to say about this that I haven't said already in terms of this piece. So I'm just kind of filling airtime so you get to listen to me be a crank about Florida. We're at this stage in the painting where it's coming together, but it just takes forever to do. So you just kind of have to just do it, and there's not really a whole lot to it. Um, if this was actually, there is something I would add. If this was an actual illustration, like if I was doing like a full out environment and stuff, this wasn't like just a little paint thing, I would probably work up a rough value scale so I would know like what my shadow shapes are and everything, so I could design those. Right now, since I'm kind of just flying by the seat of my pants on this one. So I know, Errol, you seem to be excited for the Masters of the Universe trailer. Mark, did it speak to you at all, or were you just kind of like, yeah, whatever, it's there? I'm of the opinion that the trailer music and Mark Hamill being a Skeletor kind of does a lot. That actually did a lot for me because I was not impressed by the fact that Kevin Smith was on board. In fact, that kind of acted as a an anathema to me. But seeing that trailer, I was like, you know what? This looks like it'd actually be pretty good. I'll have to check it out. See, like I wasn't that into it either back in the day. I was more into Thundercats around this time, and even then, like that, I wasn't that into it. It was just more that was more on the that was on broadcast TV more often when I watched at the time when I cared. I think at the point I started, I was watching TV. He-Man was, I think, out of broadcast until they did that weird remake in like early 2000s or 90s or something. But even then, I didn't care. It was kind of like He-Man had already hit a point where, yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. It's like Skeletor is super cool, and that's kind of about it for me. Everyone else, I don't really care about. I don't care too much about the. I don't care about the lore or the puns or anything like that. But Skeletor is pretty cool, and I like Skeletor's personality, where he just does not give a fuck. Is like I was saying this earlier. It's the same thing like how I feel about Palpatine. Yeah, yeah. Mumra was definitely like that was a design that I really loved at the time. That was I want to know who the character designer for the Thundercats was because whoever it was for that was the same character designer for the Hobbit cartoon movie that came out back in the 70s or so. It's the same production company, the Rankin and Bass, but I know that they outsourced the production to Topcraft, which was basically Studio Ghibli before it split off and became Studio Ghibli. Uh, but I wonder if the character designer was someone that was domestic or if they were based in Japan. Because Mumra's design I fucking love, and him and his like henchmen have the same aesthetic as like Gollum in the Hobbit cartoon, and that was also an aesthetic that I latched onto very early, and I think has shaped a lot of like how I design monsters and stuff. So something about this technique, yeah, I have to use shop towels for this just because so they're durable. Um, yeah, if you used like regular towels, I would this would easily be chewed through at this point. You just kind of need something durable to be able to take all the water throwing at it. So either a shop towel or like a old T-shirt or something. Yeah. So Rankin and Bass did. They oversaw the production of Thundercats and The Hobbit, but I know for a fact that they didn't do the animations. The animation was done by, I believe, Topcraft, which was based in Japan. And that is the studio that actually is the precursor to Studio Ghibli and uh, Disney Studios Japan, I believe. But my main wonder, and if I wasn't streaming, I would just kind of look this up, uh, is was the character designer for that? Was it a Japanese character designer, or was it someone that was domestic that did the designs originally? I could see either answer, to be honest. Okay, we're getting to a turning point on this. Okay, so now I can I'll start doing the his cowl, because I think that'll lifting that up will actually add some more writing. Should help make this really pop, to kind of pull that warm purple back into things. Actually, let's switch over to the mongoose again, because I think we can quickly take care of it using this. You know what? Talking about that trailer, now I have I Need a Hero stuck in my head. Yeah, but you know what? That's also why it was such limited animation. Um, I mean, that's kind of the bread and butter of the anime industry, to be honest, is detailed designs and then limited animation, except where it really counts. That was like that always bugged me. Where the thing is like Rankin and Bass. I don't know if they really were this, but I always feel like they just never kicked enough money to the production. They just kicked enough. Oh, with the really okay, for the new one. Yeah, yeah, but then again, isn't it the same animation studio that handled the Castlevania show, Powerhouse Animation? They seem to have a handle on being able to execute that. Like, I don't know if you guys wrapped up Castlevania. I think you did, Mark. Errol, I don't know if you have. Just let me know if you have or not. Oh yeah, the Greek show as well. But then again, like so they're also though kind of adopting the same technique as like anime studios where limited animation where you can make it count and save it for the action scenes. That's kind of why, like, if you notice the non-action scenes, not a whole lot of movement goes on. It's like camera pans, like things that you can kind of get away where it adds movement, but it's very cheap. It's a very cheap, cost-effective maneuver. Yeah, yeah, it's exactly the same thing where it's like anime knows, hey, we have X amount of money to spend. We're gonna spend it on this crazy action scene, so we should probably where can we cut corners? You know, that's kind of the philosophy. Where can we cut corners to make the dollar stretch? I'll say so. I would say at the very like for me finishing out season three, uh, story wise, yeah, it's okay within season three. I enjoyed it a lot, but it's okay. But the action scenes within season three are stellar, and the animation in general is fucking stellar. Like I guess it's because they knew that it was going to be the end. They kicked it up a notch. So I would wholeheartedly recommend watching for season three. And now they're making a spin off, which I'm kind of excited about, which I think possibly maybe Symphony of the Night or Rondo. Oh, is that when you say the writer, is that Warren Ellis? Yeah, I've got mixed feelings towards Warren Ellis in general. So I can understand it. The animators, I would say, clearly do love it. Uh, there's actually like a fun shout out, like a little fun Easter egg in season three where a painting has a classic Castlevania villain, or sorry, a classic Castlevania monster in it. It's like one of those plants with like the face. And they've got stuff like that. And then again, like, man, the animation they do. Well, you know what it is? It's like, I'm trying to think. What has he done besides the main thing I remember Warren Ellis from is he did a web comic back in the day called Whitechapel, and I remember it being of note at the time because the artist used SketchUp a lot to make the backgrounds and all that. And that was kind of like revolutionary at the time. Like no one else had really was doing that. Errol, if you're still around, what else has Warren Ellis done? Because I think you would know. Harold might have fallen asleep or something, or he's busy. Yeah, I am kind of like you. I am lukewarm towards Warren Ellis. I do know that after season three Castlevania, he's done. So the spinoff they are making does not have him writing for it. Um, which could be interesting. Could be depending on who the writer is. It could actually be some really interesting Castlevania stuff. I know it's going to be. No, they've only done three. Oh wait, hold on. Let me think. You had season one, which was basically Dracula wrecking shit, and then them meeting up Alucard. Oh yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. They did do season four. So season four just wrapped. Sorry. The spinoff is five. I had to think about it because like season two was Dracula. Season three was the vampire lady. Season four is everything coming undone. And the animation in season four is really amazing. So yeah, so Warren Ellis is not writing season five. It's going to be someone else. I don't know who it's going to be yet. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's kind of what I mentioned a little bit earlier. Is season five might be Rondo or it might be Symphony of the Night because they say it's going to be Maria Richter and Alucard. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I didn't quite remember that. Yeah, so Rondo would be first, and then that can lead right into Symphony. Yep. Yeah, I could see that combined. Season five is Rondo, season six is Symphony. I would not be opposed to that. So it's 12:30. I am going to finish this on another day. Likely, this is going to end up being Saturday. I think. Um, I might paint for a little bit longer. Uh, but what I might do is I might pick away at the rest of this cowl off stream just to kind of get it out of the way so we don't start the next stream having to do more of this. And I can just kind of jump into doing the colored pencils and then the acrylic on it. Yeah, yeah. See, yeah, he's gone. Yeah, Warren Ellis is gone from it. And you can actually, Mark, you can skip around on the replay. And I set up Twitch so the video on demand is available for like 14 days or whatever. And then if people are patrons on my Patreon, they get the they also can kind of just get it forever because I'm uploading these unlisted to YouTube as well for people. So for whatever Twitch takes it off, like at least it's there too. And then when I find some time around the Kickstarter stuff, I'd like to try and get some of these down to like a time lapse. So it could be seen a little bit easier. But yeah, so I think I'm gonna do this, finish this on stream on Saturday. Yeah, I was thinking like I could use. Yeah, I was thinking I could do time lapses for Instagram and Twitter, and also have like longer time lapses for publicly on YouTube. like 3 minutes or so. Uh, and yeah, I think I'm gonna just try and finish out this cow off stream because it's kind of just more of this. No, Twitter. Well, I might have to ask you about that separately. Like that's like an embedded video, correct? Because I think if you upload a video directly to Twitter, it caps it at 45 seconds. Um, and since Instagram has a limit of like a minute, I believe, like I've just been truncating time lapses down to like 44 seconds or so. It's it's weird. I don't know how to make it do 2 minutes and 10 seconds. It seems like whenever I try and upload, maybe it's just because I'm uploading through the mobile app. Uh, Whenever I upload though, it only lets me do 45 seconds. Yeah, I who knows with Twitter? It's all over the frickin' place. Um, if you upload to mobile, like you don't get the crop effect at all, but when you see it on desktop, everything still has the crop for some inexplicable reason. Of course. Of course. Yeah, of course. If you're a corporation, you can upload unlimited. So, kind of like looking at it and doing this is like a post mortem, or like a not a post mortem, but like a, I don't know, halftime break analysis on this. Uh, I think there's some things I could be doing better for it. I should have done another layer of fixative to help the gouache come off or easier. That's one thing I should have done. And then I'm noticing, at least within the cowl, I should have gone over and made sure that the color was mostly pretty saturated. The areas where it's not, it's coming up as white, which isn't ideal. And I don't think it actually is white. It is probably just a really light pink because of the, excuse me, because of the blue. It does read as white. So let me see. I think we'll do that. I was thinking about it. I might have this area stay in shadow for now, which means I might just finish out this pick out on stream real quick, because let's see, it's 12:36. I think I can finish it out by 12:45 and then call it. And then maybe like kind of assess it the next day and just tweak some things here and there. something about the brushes, if you're using like the sable brushes, you kind of just have to lick the surface to get the paint off. But if you're using like a mongoose brush or an equivalent kind of thing, like a stiffer brush, you can go in and actually scrub the page. The sable, like the white sable brushes I use, don't really allow for that. But the mongoose brushes, like the Escoda synthetics, do. Okay, we can lift out the crossbones, and then we can call it a night, I think. And then just to kind of go over the process from here, what I'll do is once the pick out to where I want it to be, I will actually, I'll fix it with workable fixative. And what that'll do is it'll make it so the gouache can't be disturbed by water. And it'll also reintroduce like a granular surface to the page, which makes it very easy for colored pencils to go on top. So from here, my usual working process is fix the gouache so it can't be disturbed, go back with colored pencils to refine some areas and kind of establish like the edges and everything like that. Basically tighten it up. And then I'll go back on top of that with some more opaque acrylic. And the whole thing came about from me looking at illustrators like Drew Struzan and Thomas Blackstreet and all that. They are the like pioneers of this technique. I just it made a lot of sense to me from a painting application. Thinking about like in terms of thinking masses and thinking about like how a lot of oil painters work, where they work very tonally and like with large masses of shape and everything. I realize I don't think that way really. I need to dumb it down for myself and break it up and have the line show through as much as I can. And so this process allows me to kind of work with the line a lot, and then also because of the introduction of the colored pencil, I kind of get to go back and do some more drawing with pencil, which is nice for me, as opposed to just doing everything with the brush. And then the opaque acrylic that goes on top of the colored pencil more or less acts as like a kicker. It's going to help unify some stuff, create some more depth to everything, because it'll kind of be like on top of, we'll do like a scumbling effect on top of the light parts, and that's going to actually what it'll do is it'll create more depth because then the opaque parts will be pushing forward a little, uh, and it'll make the shadows seem even airier where they really have like a lot of breath to them and they just breathe compared to the lights. And I think that's also where we can do a neat like Lion Decker cut in for the background as well to really jazz this up. Okay, let's do a final look. Okay. Sorry for my head. I'm just trying to lean in and see where else I can hit before I call it a night. We've got like 3 minutes left before the cutoff that I want, or the cutoff I agreed to. It's always hard at this stage because it just, at least to me, like it looks very rough and it doesn't look the way I want it to look. But I also know that this technically is like the first third of the painting. Like we're only at 30% on this. We still have 60 to whatever percent to go to get it up to the we have 70% left to go on this to actually get it to the final that it is. Let me remove that. Yeah, from what I can tell on the camera, it looks okay to you guys. To me, like everything kind of reads a little too harsh. Um, but I also think like after uh, I go back in with the colored pencils, that'll help with it too. Okay, so let me see. Is there any other egregious spots before I call it? Hit that. Hit that. Yeah, it's a neat effect. That's kind of what I was hoping it would give, and it does look good. Um, it's just it's still we can still do so much more with it, but that's going to be for another night. Um, thank you guys so much for coming out. For everyone that kind of stayed through most of the stream, or as much of the stream as you can do, thank you so much. I know some people have popped in and out already, and I said thank you to those guys. Thank you, Mark. I know you came in late, but you stayed all the way to the end. Um, I'm going to tomorrow. I'm going to take a look at this, see if there's anything else I need to adjust before I fix it, and then I'll probably come back on Saturday. Maybe about the same time as. Oh, cool. Gotcha. Yeah, Thursday I might have to reconsider as a stream day. I have to kind of see. I'm still feeling it out. Right now, I just on a whim decided Thursday, and been kind of keeping to it. But I do know I should stream on some other days, and then also I just kind of need to play around with everything. But anyway, so I think I'm going to come back on Saturday, maybe around the same time. Yeah, exactly. So it wasn't Wednesday. Uh, but I think I'm going to come back on Saturday around the same time that I started this, which was like about 9:30 ish. Today it started late because I had some technical issues with Streamlabs. It just turned out I needed to log back out of Streamlabs and then log back in to fix the Twitch credentials because I had changed my password. So stream started a little bit later, like about 15 minutes later than I wanted it to. But I think I'll come back on Saturday about the same time and work on it then. And that night we will kind of. I think we can finish it tomorrow. I think we can finish it on Saturday night. Um, Colored pencils, I don't think would take that long to do. Same the opaque acrylic really doesn't take a lot to do. Most of the heavy lifting is done by this and by the colored pencils, and the acrylic kind of just ends up being like a cherry on top. It just adds a little extra oomph to everything. Uh, I think probably the worst thing would be cutting in the background with the white, and I might start some of that once we get more of it done on the face and all that. But that also might be something that I'll just tackle off stream when I finish it. And yeah, if it continues turning out good, then afterwards I'll just make it available for someone if they want to purchase it or something like that. So anyway, that's going to be it for tonight. Again, thank you everyone for coming out, and we will be back on Saturday to tackle this. If you want to stay updated on not only like when I stream, but also various things that I'm up to and all that kind of thing, follow me on Twitter. I am on Instagram as well, both under the same name, A Sides Art. Twitter, I'm a little more active on. I've been actually kind of enjoying Twitter more, which is, I know a lot of people call it the hell site. I've been very judicious about trimming it and pruning it and making sure that I'm kind of only following the people that I want to follow and not have too much crap come in as a result. And so, yes, and also because like Twitter, you can post anything on there. It doesn't just have to be images. So I've been generally making announcements on there about this. You can also stay updated if you're. Yeah, exactly. You create your own place. Or sorry, you create your own piece. So yeah, whatever you put into it, kind of you get out of it. That's kind of the attitude I've been taking about it too. But yes, you can follow me on Twitter. You can follow me on Instagram. I also have a Patreon in case you'd like to sign up for that. I'm still trying to figure out what to actually offer on it to make it enticing. So far, if you're on the $1 tier, you get some access to work in progress things, that kind of deal. You mainly get early access. Look at illustrations that I've completed before they go live to the public. The $3 and $5 tiers offer the same thing, or offer that, and then in addition to that, they also get high-res images, past live streams that I recorded, process videos, any kind of like work in progress thing, anything that I can show like that. So I was trying to figure out how to give source files for traditional paintings. Because I don't really do like finished artwork in Photoshop. It's mainly what I do in it is thumbnails, that kind of thing. Which, to be honest, the thumbnails, the Photoshop files for those pretty much look like what they would get on a JPEG. Yeah. So I'll have to think about the 3D thing because like it may have to be something like the source file for a 3D thing. I have to think about how that would best be delivered. Uh, but yeah, I've been trying to stream some Blender stuff on there too, and kind of whatever. So anyway, this goodbye is rambling on way too long, so I'm gonna leave it for now. Have a good night, everyone. I'll see anyone that's curious about the end of this on Saturday, and we will take it to a finish then. Until then, everyone have a good night. Thank God it's Friday now, and I'll catch you all later.